Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for the launch of Channel Issue 4. This issue marks a year of remote work on Channel, and we've been so glad to stay connected with a network of readers and writers through that time. Submissions for this issue included over 1,400 poems and 300 prose pieces, so the competition was really tight. And what we've chosen to include is work we fell in love with because of its quality of observation. This is work that attends with incredible care to the details of relationships and localities and lived experiences, and that fosters empathy and connection by inviting us to completely immerse ourselves in somebody else's world. We can't wait to share some of it with you tonight. If there's a reader in particular whose work you're looking forward to, there'll be a line-up in the description box with timestamps to let you know who's up when. As well as the readings, we've invited our contributors to share photos with us of the places they live in and the places that have inspired them. Being able to include these is one of the joys of an online launch, and we hope you'll enjoy the insights they offer into the different corners of the natural world we inhabit and the distances we're connecting across tonight. We'll also be including an introduction to the work of our wonderful cover artist, Evelyn Broderick, and we hope you'll enjoy her work as much as we do. Before we get started, I want to say a huge thanks to the Arts Council and to our patrons for financially supporting this issue, and to say thanks as well to all tonight's readers, all our contributors, and everyone involved in Issue 4 for making this an issue we can be really, really proud of. Enjoy the launch.
Hi everyone! Thanks again for joining us tonight. We'll start the evening by hearing from Evelyn Broderick, our Issue 4 cover artist. Evelyn is a multidisciplinary artist whose practice brings together drawing, woodblock printmaking, and sculpture to investigate the power of skill sharing and embodied knowledge. Her work is inherently politicized with social and economic overtones. Evelyn completed her BA in Fine Art Painting at Limerick School of Art and Design and an HDip in Art and Design teaching at Crawford College of Art and Design. She also received an MA in Fine Art from Liverpool John Moores University, and while she was there, she founded an artist and art education cooperative called the Quad Collective. Now, as a member of A4 Sound Studios, she is actively engaging communities as part of A4 Sound's public program, We Only Want the Earth, and is the 2021-2020 University College Dublin Artist in Residence. The woodblock piece featured on the cover of Issue 4 is from a 2018 exhibition in A4 Sound Studios called In Passing. We are honoured to be featuring Evelyn's work this issue and to be able to continue showcasing the diverse range of socially engaged artworks and arts practices out there. Like all parts of the biosphere, a diversity of artistic, social, and collaborative practices are vital to imagine and create the balanced world we want to live within. Writing and art making don't have to be done in isolation. Individual liberation and self-actualization through creative expression is amplified when we find ways to share it in community. This is the ethos behind Channel, and we hope this event and the magazine itself does something to demonstrate that belief. Finally, we were delighted to get to work again with our Issue 1 artist, Rachel Doolin, to design the cover of Issue 4. You can find links to both Rachel's and Evelyn's websites in the description box, and we'd really encourage you to visit those to see more of their work and learn more about their practices.
My name is Evelyn Broderick, and I'm an artist. I'm interested in how socially we've become disengaged with making, disconnected from using our hands, and disentangled with how we use materials. I work with sculpture, woodblock printing, and there are also elements of sound there too. I love working with people, and I really am a keen collaborator. I think a lot about how we share skills and knowledge, and how that's passed on. And I question the role making has in a both social and collective context. Within my research, and that's all about making thinking, I draw attention to the physical aspects and how we use our hands, head and body. And I like that skill sharing is an action, and that it connects us to the past, present and future. I'm also a traditional musician and recognised that in the traditional music community there's a strong intrinsic connection to the head, the hand and the body. And there's also a performative collective experience that takes place. And I really believe that there is a place for that in art making.
The Reasons I Became a Western Chorus Frog, April 2020. I wanted to clatter like a thumbnail, dragged across a hard-toothed comb, because these are the days of turning toward home and the objects within it, of listening to the body and learning to touch. I wanted to awaken spring from the still, cold waters of the marsh and quiet the hikers bewailing the apocalypse so they could hear my trilling Genesis in its place. I wanted to inflate a golden balloon from my chest and rest on your first knuckle. Yes, I am that small and louder than the lonely delivery trucks on the highway. So you could remember when it was about more than living, dying, or almost dying, but flinging your stripes into a world reckless with breath.
The seaward side. I do not know this beach, its winter face, bulk of rocks tall from the gouge, what the corrugated sea throws up and draws back. Still I swim, summer and winter, salt always on my skin, through the flitch of sea arch, hanging above the dog pond, and out. Not quite a doggy paddle, a slow breaststroke lets me begin to learn the land from the seaward side. The fizz and bubble, exits and entrances, here and here and here. Harbour's mouth. There are people here, so much part of the place, that they are named after headlands. They have the raw-boned look of the earth about them, hair the colour of dilishk, eyes taking on the changing shades of the sea. The rich morning sun draws us out. We check the storm's leavings. Pebbles salt the boreen. Bladderwrack drapes the harbour wall. Gobs of sea spume float in the air. The loch is still choppy, made into peaks by the wind's flat blade. Neighbours untie shed doors, clamber into tractors, hammer fence posts. The fisherman has been up for hours, coiled rope in hand, meets me at the pier. We talk of the weather, face away from each other, watching the harbour's mouth. Between sheer sides of rock, a glass dam is piled high with layers of salt water. Lines of blue and white snap and curl, threatening to shatter whatever power holds them back. He tells how once a great wave came thundering, crested over this broken ring of hills. 1966 it was. They all heard the roar of it. He points to a spot up the hill, a field away, the place where a boat was hurled that time, hefted by the force of the Atlantic.
In the cave. In the cave, its innards are slick with a slow pour of green and a stubble of dark weed. Its lower gums awash and surging with wet leathers. Streams drip through and ping echoes to the ledged walls where pale starfish plack, seabirds nest. It's almost obscene to be in this deep privacy, a headland cavity with its sunless measures, someone's slack breathing. I pivot towards light and sky. Too much interiority can be deadly, like watching a kind of shame in progress. The sweet sweat of paddling out, clipping arrowheads in the rising tide. My arms seesaw into the onshore wind, carrying the cave with its steampunk sieve and squeeze, the dense, stinky processing, the new dark of growths. The speed and smoothness on the water, our parts softly at their tandem transformations.
Hi, I'm Jane Boxall. Thank you so much to Channel Magazine for choosing my poem Kayak, Haiku. There's no good way in to this tricky craft. It waits, equivocating. In grief, there's extra gravity to go around. Limbs hang heavier, more prone to sinking. 1 foot on the fiberglass sets things to quiver. The water's skin wrinkles around the kayak in a worried way. Weight shifts. Next, both feet ground your hovering half-crouch at the waterline. This can overturn any time, dump you in the unfathomable. So, take yourself a seat, symmetrical, secure, be obsequious towards all the wet and its unavoidable eddies at your feet. You can only trust this suspension just below the surface should hold. Thank you. Next, I'd like to read a poem written from the perspective of a controversial large boulder stuck in the middle of a roadway. This one is called Extraction. Actually, we landed from above, surfing in on glaciers. We are monuments to the power of sameness in this Great Britain, where homes are stone cold, not American clapboard blown across the plains. Let the four winds press their rain, snow and sunburn. We, Carboniferous, have held our poses through cruel millennia. We're indifferent to your paper rounds and dinner times, your curtains blinking, closed, open. We block cul-de-sacs, interrupt fresh pavements, or, caged by railings, sulk. Some of us are shy. We peak like icebergs, our bulk buried in the earth. When you commuted on horseback, we made for sound mounting blocks, offered sturdy workbenches upon which to divide wood, grind millet, beat flax. We warm in the rays under your aging soft flesh, your weak skeleton. Closing time hurdlers, underestimating us, are snubbed and toe-stubbed. One of our number stands guard at the road junction, wreathed with orange cones, and regularly takes a victorious bite out of a bumper. Thank you very much.
My name's Dermot, DS Mullally, and I'll be reading a poem this evening called Thin Body, Clumsy Wing. Finally, the M50 splits out toward Dublin in the branching direction of long stalks and white flowers, those ones you see on roadsides and breaking out through tarmac. Wild angelica, I think, maybe hemlock. Straight lines in any case to the end of direction and the bloom of direction's fine point. I pull the van through feeders past Houston, just before the river by Memorial Garden Park. Above me, there's a heron on thin body, clumsy wing. Flops down like a duvet landing on a newly bare mattress. I notice that the lights changed a long time ago. Shift into first and push forward. Chase after cars and wildflowers and traffic and whatever I'll see when I reach them. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Andrew Boden. I'm going to read a little from my story Along the Malecon. For those of you who may not know, the Malecon is a 7-kilometer seaside walk in Havana, Cuba. It's beautiful and dramatic, especially on a windy day. Today I'm reading from a later passage in my story when my two main characters, Charlene and her son Ian, come across some Cuban boys fishing off the Malecon. Charlene followed the boys' fishing line down 10 feet to the water and then out over a breakwater formed from the large rocks piled along the bottom of the Malecon's wall. A pelican had swallowed the boys' bait fish, hook and all. The fishing line disappeared into its long, thick beak as if it had swallowed a piece of stiff dental floss. But the boy held the line taut and the poor bird thrashed in the water. He gave the rod a little jerk and the creature's long gray neck snapped back and the bird spun around to face his tormentor. The boy opened the face of the reel and shouted, "Wele, wele!" The frightened bird flew across the water, past the boats bobbing near shore. The boy closed the face of the reel and about 100 feet away the line jerked taut and the pelican plunged into the water. He began to reel the bird in. He wound in a little line and then pulled with his body and then wound in more line. Repeat. All the while he laughed and babbled something in Spanish she didn't understand, didn't want to understand. His laughter hit her again and again like hard blows. It was a hyena's laugh, predatory and mocking and released with abandon. Her body went rigid with disgust. He couldn't have been 16, maybe 5 years older than Ian. She wanted to push him over the rock wall, push the two younger boys after him too. She looked at him again, and it was as if the ocean, the sky, the wall of the Malecon had been stripped away. There was just this laughing, cruel boy, and his cruelty was suddenly a mirror of every little cruelty she'd openly or secretly enjoyed. She closed in on him, and all she could spit out was "lo comes," as if eating it would somehow make up for his sadism. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening. And of course, thank you for reading and supporting a great magazine like Channel. Take care. Bye.
Hello. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Rory O'Sullivan. I have 2 poems in this issue of the magazine, so I'll just read them. The first is called The Baptism of John Moriarty. It's about a man called John Moriarty who was like a mystic kind of philosopher in Kerry, and it's dedicated, this poem, to the two people who introduced me to him, who are Chris and Amy. So thank you, Chris and Amy. And yeah, here's the poem. The Baptism of John Moriarty. He lowered his mind's contents to the lake as to a stretched bed where, slicing with a silk scalpel, it opened his face, and a rush-coloured sponge staunched the flow from his mind. He stooped down, gathering his thoughts in a wooden bowl. He could feel the glimmering of something off in the lake's distance, like the sound of a scuttling under his head's horizon. It was the glimmering of a small moon, which he examined and could perceive gaped bright glowing and charged hills of oil all crushed and oozing. He could see that the moon was made of a yellow unction, so with the lake's wings he reached for it, and when he was at last there, washed with it 3 times, then was finished. A crow circled him in the air, wondering if he was alive. He went home, half soaked, half frozen. Now there was a third half. Okay, that's one. The second is about a place in Cork where I am not now, but where I was, called Garyduff Woods. So the poem is called July in Garyduff Woods. The stones glint like hundreds of full moons. A stream runs glinting over their heads. The grass and leaves greet one another with glints of green smiles as around them birds glint and dance in feathery coutures. Something above breaks as a squirrel jumps, air surfing like a cat between 2 branches, then disappears. In summer, everything is possible. The trees are down from Olympus, and love glints from every living and inert thing and is more palpable than air. Okay, that's me. Thank you, Cassie and Elizabeth, and looking forward to seeing everybody's stuff when this goes on. Thank you.
מחוץ לעיר. אין סוף שמיים ופלומה ירוקה זרחנית. אני לא מתביישת בפגמים שלי. מותר להיות חולד לא פחות מאית הרים, ואני הרי לא זה ולא זה. רוח עיוור חולף בשדה למקומות אחרים. לפעמים אני מתפלאת שיש עוד מקום מחוץ לעיר, ואפשר כל כך ירוק, ויש מקומות בשם אחוזם ותל נגילה. הופכת שוב במה שחשבתי קבוע ומרחיקה בתוך עצמי, ויש מרחק רב, ואין קבוע.
Yoni Hammer-Kossoy, and I'm going to read my translation of Outside the City by Weinberg. Endless sky and a glowing downy green. I'm not ashamed of my flaws. It's just as good to be a mole rat as a mountain eagle. And I'm neither this or that, a blind wind passing through the field to other places. Sometimes I'm amazed there is someplace outside the city that so much green is possible and small towns are nearby in the sudden expanse. I turn over again what I thought was fixed and far gone in myself, only to find great distances and nothing done.
No SOS on. I was going to lunge back for something left in the car, but by then the car had vanished. These things happen, you know, when a crow shuffles its wings and strops its beak on a power line over the city with record temperatures predicted, and a big freighter leaning, or rather listing dangerously in the bay. Who wouldn't want their illegal cargo forgiven or sunk without a trace? Who wouldn't believe these wriggling newborns are innocent and hungry? And who would imagine the moment those nasty memories start floating up again, and the look on the face? I'm navigating subtle waters in the mist, which is to say I have no manifest at this point, nor customs nor pirate fear. There's nothing incandescent about this, coated as you may. Flopping around with your psychedelic horns and spurs, you get only a glimpse of what I'm up against right now, which you will be up against soon enough. All I can say is practice, practice, practice. Knowing you ride a breath is the ticket for how to ride away from it. Meaning I'm in no hurry to return to your harbor or your regulations, free as this with all the possibilities, a clear agenda, and nothing separating me from the high seas.
Without even the suggestion of a breeze, somehow the thermals floating off the water are enough to make all the tree's leaves waver and brush against one another, which strikes me as a particular definition of perfection. The sound of wind without wind. It's kind of insulting, in fact, how perfect the weather is today. Just for a moment, do Abigail and I approach the beach. It's the only way to access the trailhead, where children scream and splash like wet monsters, and parents hammock their asses in the plastic webbing of collapsible lawn chairs. Dads nursing beers and halfway asleep, while moms in big shade hats read checkout aisle novelettes or scratch at newspaper crosswords. Squirrels brazenly descend the red oaks and maples to beggar crackers from picnickers. Ducks marching with unflappable entitlement to demand their share of potato chips, Cheetos, torn wads of hot dog bun. You know a place has lost its wildness when the animals behave like dwarf-ized delinquent humans. That said, I cannot plead complete innocence and now and again having fun playing with the park's semi-domestics. Take, for example, the time Abigail and I slowly patrolled the shallows here. Not so much swimming as floating, our fingers like gondoliers in the muck beneath, gently propelling us along. While stalking through marsh grass like sparse cut-rate hair plugs, a covey of paranoid, panicky ducks. Perhaps even some of these very same cracker demanders on shore today. It really wasn't all that long ago. Somehow, in our foul harassment, I skidded my left arm over the tines of a garden rake buried in the silt. 4 parallel ragged lines cut through my flesh, elbow to wrist, with sharp efficiency ending our ducky swim. Good times. But for me, there will be no swimming today. On the pond's far side, the part that isn't preservation land, where spanking new homes clutter along the shore, I used to have a friend who lived with his uncle in a princely Leonberger like a black-faced lion disguised as a bear. There were only a few houses over there in those days, mostly fishing camps and summer cabins with just a handful of folks sticking it out through the winters. Which maybe accounts in part for why, in my mind, this remains a secluded place. My friend liked the sport of fishing, but was terrified of the water. So when I'd visit, I'd take his uncle's rowboat out on my own and angle for pickerel and white perch, and sometimes thick rainbow trout if I was lucky, while my friend sat with his regal dog on the dock, and really just barely on the dock, a single quick step backward to the safety of solid ground, and watched me cast and troll. Later, when I oared back in, I'd tell him all about my adventure on the pond, and he'd listen with genuine interest, always one hand buried in the shag of tawny fur framing his enormous dog's black face. That friend's gone now. So is his uncle's house. So is the magnificent Leonberger. Should anyone be surprised at that?
Hi, my name is Heather Hamilton, and I am reading my poem, Standing at Shore, Waiting. All my years marked with water, the column of me whittled in rings, marks, no need for stars, an ocean full of color, no need for apologies, living by the uncurling after high tide. When the waves taught me to smile, did they know my laugh would always be like this? Drawn suddenly with froth at its ends, face teased and shattered, waiting for a roll and sigh, ha ha, the waxing of water droplets at the lowest curve of my belly. The waning and pull. This is the moment. This. Sighing through surf, puckered by cool water, laughing with creased joints. Once I had enough salt and sand grit to paint a mural of my relief. Submerge, rise, submerge, rise. Ah. Ah, ah, ah. Here I am with nothing but an ocean, and then it starts, rough lapping between my ribs, bruised tendons torn by new rememberings. When I learned to smile, how could I have known? Something with long legs and ticking knees has curled in my collarbone, catching plankton spirals in my throat. A hole without a nightlight, without blessings. The reformed tides, up, 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 fill my lungs. My spit is sticky as blood, my eyes split and ooze. This is a world where cold means the same thing as dying. We mark the sea's rise with a new antonym for life. I stand just below shore, tipped like an unfinished song. I won't unlearn this smile. Thank you.
I'm Ivis Whitright, reading my poem, Temperate. A train platform, taunting wind, that eats into sidewalks and pushes through softer bodies that have yet to become sediment, to shape harder hearts and colder spines, known as plateaus. And it's a nightmare here where living things are wet as in desert, their outsides burning, their teeth those of jungle, but cold as only nature in winter where the warm experience autumn. In the bricks they close off, while believing in temperate zones. A wind that pushes through softer sediment to shape plateaus, and it's wet as in jungle, but cold as autumn in the temperate zones. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kristin Camitta Zimet. I live in Virginia at the midpoint of the Appalachian Trail, which is the longest trail in the world, I believe. 2,200 miles long. That's 3,540 kilometers. A headline appeared in the newspaper. Runner does Appalachian Trail in 45 exhilarating days. A record. This poem is my response. The record. I want to break the record for the Appalachian Trail, the slowest traverse. I welcome each false summit as it comes, crest upon crest, the continued breathing of a friend. Time me. I stop more often than I go, rock back on my haunches while the bear's paw knocks down service berries. The raccoon cleans and cleans her claws. The rattler relaxes. The orb weaver crafts her intricate circle and eats it up. I veer onto side trails, test out otter slides, crawl into matted grass beside the fawn. Pencil my name in the non-existent, unofficial book showing I loitered till 6 pawpaws went yellow soft and thumped down for a fox and 1,000 ants. Say I was supplied at every wayside, every hour by sisters driving low roads, and 100 never met trail angels. Right in the globe that I struggled up Katahdin, where the trail dwindled and became nothing but boulders, but imagination, while wind warping the banner trees beat and froze me. Yes, but to the end, I chose the longest course. I labored with the aphid up a witch hazel trunk to seal my eggs in a peaked gall, made my bedroll with a spiked larva of a tussock moth. I swam the bee horizon of the soil beside cicada nymphs, 13, 15, 17 years before we broke upward. Go ahead, publish it. I win. I slid with the leaf miner between covers of a single locust leaf, finishing the tissue between veins.
It is so good to be with you. Thank you, Kasia and Elizabeth, for accepting my poems. The first one that I'll read is called Raging. A storm rose and whipped debris across our island. Plastic wrap, ballots, rotting fruit. I hung my heart on a tree. It was not spared. It swung madly, pelted by war resolutions and protocols for dealing with asylum-seeking children. We lived in the storm. We lost our breath and covered our noses and mouths. We tried to do surgery and set bones. My drubbed heart leaking. Branches fell and crashed. The wind asked questions of my heart. What is the world you want? My arteries coiled like vines. For what will you bleed? The other poem is called This Place. Where something like a flag is raised, where water sharpens its tongue, where rocks labor silently to forget, where bougainvillea, where air falls from one mouth to another, where palms bear their old fruit, where sweat finds a path, where leaves are knocking, knocking, and your skin is the door. Thank you.
Distant Smoke, Michael Backus. This is an excerpt. In the year my mother has lived in Indiana, Em and I visited regularly. And though she's always been fun to talk to, bright and prickly and interested, she seemed lighter, freed from the burden of our father, who at the end slept 16 hours a day, acted erratically, including once firing a gun in the house and briefly choking my mother, and was a near constant source of anxiety. My mother genuinely enjoys the assisted living home. She is a social creature who was married for 5 decades to a depressed man who mostly resisted going out and insisted on running home as soon as possible if he did. At the facility, she has friends to eat with at every meal, and it's a joy to watch her sit in a group of women happily talking away. It only seems fair to her and to us that she survive a few more years, that she enjoy the social existence she's always craved. On the first Sunday I spent here 2 weeks ago, my sister and Kai were staying at a motel, and I had settled into the afternoon in my mother's small but cozy one-bedroom apartment in the assisted living facility. A golf tournament on TV, the sun warm and bright through the white curtains, Mom doing her crossword in her chair by the windows, the soft tones of the announcers in the hyper-manicured green of the golf course, conspiring to lull me to a drifting sleep. I only vaguely heard the news that golfer Kenny Perry's charity was Potter's Orphanage in Bowling Green, Kentucky. These last words cutting through a mid-afternoon haze that had settled on the sunny living room. I live there, Mom said, looking up from the newspaper. I know, Ma, I said. I do know where you grew up. No, the orphanage, Potter's Orphanage, she said, obviously annoyed I'd once again assumed she was showing a touch of senility. That's where I lived after Mama died. This was new information. I knew things had gotten rough in various homes after her mother died when she was only 12. Her father, born before the Civil War and already 65 when Mom was born, her mother was barely 20, was gone before she turned 8. Once orphaned, she and her sister were separated and never really lived together again, though they'd often been a surly island of two growing up. Years later, as an adult, Mom met a bus driver who said she and her sister were the two fightingest kids I ever met, which deeply embarrassed her, though we all, husband, daughter, son, thought it a fantastic detail. I'd heard the stories of Mom's life after her mother died, the whispers of grabby foster fathers and despotic mothers who treated Mom as a live-in servant, but I hadn't heard she'd been in an actual orphanage. We ate on 10 plates. I remember peeling potatoes, a lot of potatoes. There wasn't much meat, Mom said. One time, this gangly kid ran through the halls yelling, "We're having bologna tonight, we're having bologna." He was so happy. I was too. I lived there off and on for 3 years. I'd go with the family for a while, then come back. I guess there was something wrong with me. I kept getting sent back. She said this without self-pity, though it choked me up and I had to sit up straight and fool with the TV remote to hide it.
Hello, my name is Olga Dugan, and this is my poem, Mother to Child, a Prayer. Mother to Child, a Prayer, for Julie Nolan, Mom, Nikki, and our mothers all. Mountains, Atlantic blue and milk mist ridges, great silver bells, quaking aspens, hauling up the stars. White lilies walking the forest edge, rhododendron peeking around brown trunks, iris and spigelia tumbling scores of pink on Indian pink, lure me a ways from the city into a mother's garden of hopes, a bloom for your future, little one. May your first and lasting schoolroom be a coppice of September elms, forest floor swept clear for new growth, where you listen to a stream's basil teachings and revel in reading maps of the whole world. You'll travel one day, leaving folks the richer for your journeys. May your wonder years teach lessons about rest and hydrangeas, snuggling under rainbows of aster, about spirit and forsythia, sprinkling yellow sparks among sleepy chestnuts, about peace and the motionless rhythms snow writes along small bites of riverside, where reeds leap in crescendos from spring waters toward tranquil sky. And when you're twice mother's age, hair silvering gray, may your eyes never dim while trying oils on canvas to find sunrise amid lavender sprays, rock crest drapes, forget-me-not, spreading dusk to dawn, as you tell a truss of grands how once the trees and wind hummed, and the rush of leaves mumbled hymns, quieting your being, as even now earth's hush unravels and soothes my mind, so that as I might see these blessings on your long life. Thank you.
And this poem, Pile Up, is in issue 4 of Channel. Pile up. Have you ever hit an animal with your car? You know the sound of flesh and fear against dumb dead metal. And you can't just leave the thing, in our case a vixen, if it's still alive. You have to show her mercy if she won't live, and kill her. It's a hard call to make, even if you've made it 1,000 times. Most lore about foxes is false. They can't breed with dogs, different chromosome numbers. They don't kill for fun. They don't kill on accident. They don't have superpowers, at least our vixen didn't. She was DOA, or DOOA, dead on our arrival. Sometimes it's not hard to tell, but it's still hard. Sometimes it is hard to tell if they'll make it or not. In our case, no question not. You're supposed to learn to stop asking why. You have to. Why this fox and not another? You'll go mad. But I ask now, as a small eulogy, its size proportional to my knowledge of this particular vixen. I ask why the way owls ask who, as I pinch the tail fur of the vixen and drag it to the side of the road. A couple of teens out for a joyride laugh at the sad mom wasting her time with a dead fox, driving her kids in the car crazy, and twitching as mange-bearing ticks boing up her arm. People don't like that there is dying. I wonder if our collision with mortality will leave us smeared on our roads, or bounced off in ditches dug, most likely, by prisoners on work crew duty. Will we even feel it? Will we be the dumb dead metal? And who will drag us out of the way of the parliament of fleshless operations, bringing up the beginning and the ending? And now I want to share this other poem that I wrote called Mystery Confirmed. Quote, "No wonder we're fearful of being harmed as we harm the world." Meg Wheatley. By the end of the year my grandmother was born, there were 2 theories about very small things, and both were right. The previous year, there had been none. The thought experiments turned into very small, very precise machines. Think it, it becomes. The very act of observing something changes it. Some things are too long to see. Radio waves, the whole truth, the end of the rainbow of history, even if everything is consciousness. If everything is consciousness, then who is thinking, bombs bring peace, whiteness is better, trees are paper? Observation is transformation. If seeing something changes it, who should step in front of a mirror? Who should watch a murder? Who can be let into a peaceful meadow? And who needs to turn their gaze away lest we leave but a quiet spot before we know what's going on? Thank you.
Hello, this is James Owens from Ontario, Canada. I'd like to begin by saying that I'm very grateful to Elizabeth and Cassia for the honor of seeing my work included in this issue of Channel. The poem I'm going to read is titled The Ogre. The Ogre. I digressed from the main trail to a faint trace that leads through waist-high ferns growing in mossy earth. At this season their leaves aged, as if cut precisely from thin shives of bronze, and came out onto a heave of rock beside the river, where it vaults and swirls and tosses flakes of foam as it pounds over boulders. I was thinking about these two things that I love, poetry and nature, and you know how we all play these little dramas in our heads. I saw right then that if an ogre should force me to give up one of them, I would surrender nature, ashamed at my sheer moral failure, but preferring the pale, tasteless, hardly loving sack of faulty music that I pull over my head when I sit down to write. I am one who needs to go that far away, that alone. I stood on the ancient rock. There was lichen and a few searching ants. On the other side of the water's guttural noise, a wind shook through yellow leaves of aspen and richly green hemlock, the sky a darkening scumble of cloud. A crow flapped down the course of the river, cawing. Just the sort of thing someone like me would want to say, and it is what happened.
This is Thomas Mixon with the poem Verses. Phlox is a wall that can't guard the eggs you have yet to lay this year. Each year is the same. We fight the same fight. We draw the same lines in the same sand. World peace blooms as we stake claims, dig our claws in. The poor plants bear false names. There is war here. The tall stems are shelled and bent, lobes stand no chance. Since we grind on for some time, when a truce crops up in the form of rain, we don't carp. We stop. We drink the sky in haste just in case there is a God that knows wrong, right, and which of us is which. The tap flows. We're slow to draw. Our swords are the seeds that sow on their own hurt past the point of one more birth. We'll find out next year. Each year is the same till it's not. Our fault lines thrive.
Hi, my name is Maeve McKenna. Thanks to editors Elizabeth and Cassia of Channel Magazine for selecting my poem Secret Season for issue 4. Secret Season. Here in this leafless woodland, I have come to walk into my father's death. Trees connive, latch their fibrous anchors around the soles of my wet shoes, ignite tripwires. No future questions, ask nothing, it is less than nothing. Shifting burials. Ground does not absorb the privacy of grief in its compacted decay. Interred soil exposed by public sadness. I cannot name loss, so I will call it my secret season. My father, tossed inside the winter of a coffin, withered, offered beneath varnished deadwood to high altars of summer beliefs. The path thins, disguised by plotting leaves, my feet brimming at the edges of my own footprints, pressed to the route I must explore. I have yet to free my body of this union. Still, the coiled heron swoops in spring, fanned wings I could quietly rest on, and seaweed swallows without restraint, bubbling under the incoming tide.
Hello, my name is Mariska Pichette. I use she, her, hers, and I'm reading today from the Pecumtic Valley in western Massachusetts, the ancestral homelands of the Pecumtic and Abenaki peoples. I'm pleased to be taking part in my second channel launch. I had a short story and a poem appear in issue 3, and for issue 4 I'm reading a selection from my essay, Lineage of Fire. The edges of our world were cut from hills and trees. Behind our house the road stumbled from tar to dirt before winding up into the woods. Trees for a mile before houses dropped back into the landscape. Log cabins and farms and streams where frogs spawned. I hiked there with myself, and with my dog when I couldn't be alone. Once I brought a journal up Turtle Hill to the south, where the orchards wandered out from the woods in sharp lines that turned pink and white in the spring. I climbed through the blossoms until I reached the very top, picked myself a peach, and wrote about places with no hills. In the east the hills were softer, gradual slopes over fields that grew long and dropped back every year in the fall, when the Clarks hayed the grass and drove the fireflies up into the trees. In summer I walked these hills, from grass to dry leaves to grass again, through the woods and out to the path driven through the trees by power lines. When it was damp, mist enshrouded the towers, and if you closed your eyes you could hear the buzzing of the lines. I didn't bring my journal here. The largest hills were southeast of our world, on the fringes. Piper and I sought them on foot. We walked down the road, past fields and a mulberry tree we always visited when the school year began. The sun and road warmed the berries. We crunched tiny seeds between our new teeth. At the junction with Upper Road, where we used to wait for the bus, we could see the Clark's pumpkin patch and the other side of Turtle Hill. On cold days, we made shapes with our breath. If you cross Upper Road, there is a final hill down to the railroad tracks, where we put ties on the rails and waited for trains to beat them into angles we could bring home. When the wind changed, the sound of the engines roared back from the hills in the north. We felt movement and noise surround us, the train's roar taking hold of the air in our lungs and shaking us with the leaves.
Zombie dogs. Cecilia now stays in a cottage in town, yet she still has all of her dogs. They all run loose. All of them have changed the color of their fur. Old Smoky, who used to be your dog, was reddish-brown when he was alive. Now he is black. He seems to have a hard time remembering you. In the backyard there is a small pond with an old tire in it. A yellow-striped cat takes a drink, stalks the fish.
Hi, I'm Dana Sonnenschein, and I'm here to share with you my poem called Wolf Sketchbook. That's actually a drawing done from a photograph, because when I tried holding my sketchbook up to the webcam, the drawings were so pale that all I could see was what looked like a big white page with maybe 1 or 2 lines on it. Sorry. That wolf in the sketch is Atka, whom this poem is about, and he was an ambassador wolf at the Wolf Conservation Center in upstate New York. That is one of my many cats, Banshee, and I guess she's going to help me with this video because that's the 3rd time she's been through, so we're just going to keep it. And what that means is that he was a wolf who was habituated to being around humans from the time that he opened his eyes on, so that he not only was on display when people came to learn about wolves, but he also toured and went places like the nation's capital and the Museum of Natural History in New York City. And I met him when he was about 2, still pretty young, at the Peabody Museum at Yale. And I was impressed, and I began going to visit the Wolf Center and continued visiting there and going to lectures and learning things about wolves 3 times a year for many years, until near the time Atka retired, I started going more often. And when he was retired and stopped touring and going places and having all that excitement in his life, they let me come up to visit him pretty regularly. I went once a month for nearly 3 years and drew and sketched and kept him company and more or less amused, and that's what this poem is about. It has an epigraph that says, "In memory of Atka, May 17th, 2002 through September 22nd, 2018. A very heartbreaking day for me, because I'd actually been going up to visit him that day, and when I got there that morning, he had passed 3 hours previously. Did not write this poem right away. Wolf Sketchbook. A blank page, slightly crinkled. The snowy afternoon, I couldn't draw an Arctic wolf because he stood so close. All I could see were crystals coming to rest on his furry back, mounding up as others melted on paper that would have torn at a pencil's touch. One spring, that same white wolf, standing shoulder deep in green, sniffing wild roses, pale petals piled like cool drifts over brambles, silvery graphite shadows, the dark spot of his nose. Early summer, Atka again, sleek, sprawled on his side, panting, white lashes lowered at a slant, wind-ruffled throat and flank, his fur reflecting so much light I drew him haloed, no background. The days I used a 6H pencil, he's nearly invisible on the tundra of the page, but I can feel the rounded edges of his ears, the profile of his brow and muzzle incised with that sharp point. Some days he lay just uphill in a thicket, keeping an eye on me as I sketched, meeting my gaze, then glancing aside when I lifted my head. A low growl taught me to stare anywhere but into his eyes. I learned to greet him nose to nose, eyelids half lowered to look and look away, as he did. In later years, he lay so close I could shift a knee and brush his tail, fur pressing the fence, poking through, a wolf on the lookout, trusting me to watch his back. I memorized each line of his left rear paw. I memorized each line of his left rear paw, dark pads, tufts of fur between the toes, transparent nails shaded with age. And then there was the day I sat, black sketchbook balanced against one arm in chain link. He slipped his muzzle out, caught the spiral in one canine, bit down, and pulled. "Akka," I said, "please," as wire uncurled, stretching, tearing through page corners. He paused, looked up from under his lashes, tugged gently, then let go. Of course he wanted the sketchbook I carried like a favorite bone, but even if he'd unwound all that bound it, I couldn't let go of so many years. The contour lines of face, head, neck, shoulders and spine, sweep of tail, the angle of an aging hip, my gestures reflecting his as he turned, stood, stretched, pricked his ears or lowered them. Sketches mostly half done, attempts to capture where Akka had just been, because wolves are eternally moving, shifting their weight, sniffing, listening, looking. Now, every time I turn a page, it catches and must be pushed over coils I never could get right. And there he is, knowing he could tear twisted wire from paper, he could mangle nearly anything. There he is, ochre eyes gazing into blue as he opened his mouth and let go, because he understood the difference between something given, like love, and something taken, which we always feel like our loved ones are when they go. I have tried to keep Akka with me, not only in drawing and in advocacy for wolves, but, I can never get the angle right. That is his paw print, upside down, I guess, from your perspective. Thank you for listening.
My siblings rush back inside with tinted eyelashes hanging in butterfly wing beats, and I bury my gloved fingers in fresh white, in the steady drumming of snow that fills up the spaces around me. I plug my ears with it, swallow it pure from the sky, a honeyed blandness, a crunching silence, and my skin tingles in the shades of pink and gray and blue, and melodies the wind can't understand because I am the trees it buffets, and I am the homes that absorb the shrieks of it, and children are sponges in winter rains, and snow-cast middle of February days that sound like heavy boots against linoleum floors, like the sound of my father coming home, and I absorb that blow too. My cheeks flesh yellow and pink and purple, my nose a button fresh sewed against the skin of my face, slightly crooked in the colder days, and I sit now in a house softer than the spaces I used to lie. I still plug my ears in the hopes of stopping the bludgeoning that comes with whistle winds against bare skin, but that is something I used to like.
My name is Jess McKinney, and here are two poems that were written during the pandemic lockdown in Inisho, Donegal. The first is called Witch Elm. The scientific name for the plant is Ulmus glabra, and that's Leithin Schleva in Irish. Witch comes from weis, meaning pliant or supple, which also gives definition to wicker and weak. Stock in the forest, elms creak their corky ridges, shuddering woods splayed with partridge breast, cat's paw markings, and the occasional iridescent greenish sheen. They litter acres around with winged samara fruit, wingnuts, helicopters, whirlybirds, polynoses, and spinning jennies. With a dark inner bark at their breast, the panacea, blessed by the goddess of universal remedy, born of the Greek Alcipius and Epine, healing for the nerves, gut, and heart, even toothaches if you chew it. Even so, I daren't cut into the sapling you planted, which has almost entirely swallowed the house. In times of uncertainty, I cradle at the base until my knees go numb, place my hand to its breadth, and tune in to the thrumming whispers urging me towards the rushes. The second is baby's breath, the scientific name for which is gypsophilia, or Luis moilis in Irish. They say if you keep waking in the middle of the night, you should get up and do something totally different. Grab your old shoes and earphones and outrun the fog. Follow the sound of the stream, shallow and glinting like a sheet of windshield thrown from the crash into the field. Push beyond the cooling gleam of streetlights, burnt arge, wading through a ditch of broken glass and nettles. Grow more aware of your body with every step, hard-backed and bracing against the unraveling night. Keep going until you're treading long grass, and give up on your dreams, soft in the moss where we used to go meeting. I've been out foraging for us. Dandelions, baby's breath, and the nothing that persists in the warm ground where you first touched my mouth. This bed is one of my making. You will recognize my palm upturned under your own. Lie where I know where to find you. We've both come so far to set our arms down, and I'm not even angry anymore. At your side, there are only some times I think, I don't love myself enough for this. And then there are other times I know. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Ariel Abear. I'm reading poems today from Durham, North Carolina. Thank you to Elizabeth and Cassia for giving these poems a home at Channel Magazine. My first poem is called Ugliest Orchid in the World. On 2020's list of plant discoveries, a new species of orchid, Gastrodia agnicellus, found in Madagascar, already nicknamed ugliest in the world. Emerging from its life underground to show its face, petals like the raw flesh of a sore throat, opening to cough or sing death's final refrain. I want to welcome this flower. I want to look in a mirror down my own throat and see what sings there. I want this flower to be drawn and painted, hung in a room with high ceilings, above some rich someone's grand piano, appreciated by black-tie party guests, swirling gold champagne and snatching hors d'oeuvres from a silver platter floating past on the hired help's shoulder. I want this flower to be pinned to one lover's lapel by another, to mean I promise. I want to kneel in the forest, to smell the dim, musky rose breath from its open mouth, and for one moment, when I lean close, it will appear as if our lips might touch, as if we might kiss. My second poem is called Backyard Universe. Our house smells like onions and butter, summer days, the base of umpteenth home-cooked meals, all good ruse. I reach for the last 2 clean plates in the cupboard. Never knew before the virus that we were terribly short on dishes, that we had far more spoons than forks. How often now we settle for the wrong utensil instead of washing the right one, using the edge of a spoon to hold a chicken breast still and sawing away with a butter knife. And when the last mug is gone, it's coffee from the gravy boat we've never once used for gravy. Of course, there are worse things. Daily record high hospitalizations. Each hour's whirlwind of devastating newscasts. The sheer cliff of numbers, the dead being read from a graph. So I count my friends, my family, lucky in life. Let the distance between us be measured in moonlight. We go outside, turn our foreheads up to the darkening July night skies to watch the Neowise comet blaze above the branches. Gravel tail burning. What else can you call that but a beacon, a torch, just when we thought nothing could be brighter, more welcome than stars? Thank you.
Hi everyone! Thanks so much for joining us and our amazing contributors tonight to celebrate the launch of Issue 4. We hope you enjoyed the event, and we really look forward to sending a copy of Issue 4 to our subscribers this week. If you'd like to become a subscriber or place an individual order for the issue, please visit our online shop, which you can find a link to in the description box. While restrictions in Ireland currently don't allow bookshops to open, Issue 4 will be available to purchase from our retail stockists as soon as they're able to operate in person again. In the meantime, you can find Issue 4 at select food shops, including Bang Bang and Noms, both in Phibsborough. Finally, we want to give a huge thanks again to the Arts Council for their generous support of this issue, and to our patrons, whose contributions help to sustain us both financially and energetically. Hojat Intisari, Hannah Gaden-Gilmartin, Naomi Jew, Fanine O'Driscoll, and Denise Wilson, as well as those who prefer not to be named, we are exceedingly grateful for your support, which has enabled us to increase payments to our contributors and expand our practice this year. If you're interested in donating to support channel or in becoming a patron, you can learn more about that on our website as well. Okay, that's it for me. Thanks again everyone for being here with us tonight. We hope to be able to meet in person again very soon, but in the meantime, we really have enjoyed putting together these online launches, and we're grateful for the ability to still connect with you all in this way. So, good night.
Hi Jen, thanks for tuning in. Before we finish up, we just wanted to let you know that we're opening submissions for issue 5 on the 1st of May, and they'll stay open until the 15th of June. So if tonight's readings might have tempted you to send something our way, please do. We'd love to read whatever you have to share with us, and there'll be a link to our submissions guidelines in the description box. Thanks so much again to all our readers, to Evelyn, and to everybody involved in issue 4. It's been an absolute joy to work with you, and we're wishing you all a great 2021.